Good evening. Hey, how are you doing? This is Sam in the Relove Guitars workshop. Nice to have you here tonight, this evening, as the sun goes down. We've got a Yamaha Pacifica to set up, and these are really nice bog standard guitars. This one's got a bit of fret wear on it, but the frets are, other than that, the frets are quite chunky, meaning they've got lots of life in them, so we can afford to take a layer off this to get rid of these grooves. So yeah, Pacifica is a really nice bog standard Strat style guitar. This one's obviously, you know, it's not new, it's quite old, it's been played, but it looks like it's sort of been played probably by somebody who's kind of played mostly in the chords department down here, which is nothing unusual. It's the tremelo set floating, so I didn't check, but I don't think there's a tremolo arm with it, but I'll double check that anyway. And I've asked John, the owner, whether he wants it reset in a floating mode or whether he wants it set flat with forward movement or sort of downward bend, or locked so it doesn't do any at all. We'll have to see what he wants, but generally speaking, everything is in reasonable order except the jack plug has done its familiar thing of dropping off and going inside the body. So I won't really know whether there are any mechanical, or not mechanical, electrical problems until we get that really connected back up. So that's quite a priority, really. But generally speaking, I don't anticipate major hassle. It could do with a good clean all the way through, so I'm going to take everything off it when I've done the kind of action and fret leveling anyway, so give it a really nice clean through so it comes back looking a lot cleaner and a lot fresher than it did, and of course with a nice low playing action. These strings are very, very old. Given the state of the jack plug bit, I kind of suspect that John may just have acquired this, and I think he's a newcomer to playing the guitar, so I think he's got it and he wants it set up nicely and to make it play easily. So it's going to be my pleasure to do that, but I think judging by that, it's probably not being played. So I can see up here there's a little bit of wear on the fingerboard where the fingers, sweat from the fingers has corroded it away a little bit, but again, won't be really that noticeable by the time we've cleaned it up. Yeah, a few dings and scratches here and there, but otherwise good old Pacifica. Nothing surprising. It's got quite a nice neck. People ask about shapes of necks. I guess because this is curved, equally curved all the way across, I guess you would call this a C-shaped neck, but it's not a deep one, it's quite shallow. Yeah, and everything else sort of where it should be. So I'm going to get stuck into doing that one in a second. I'm just going to shut down what I was doing here. I will what am I doing? I'm going to throw away some files. Just bear with me a second while I chuck some stuff away. I've got to make sure I know that I've got everything back. Had some interesting, where's it gone? Yeah, interesting comments this morning on YouTube where somebody said that they were, let's see what's happening here. I'm going to make a mistake if I'm not careful. Yeah, somebody said that they were had come to my video to find a particular thing and found themselves wishing I'd just get on with it and do this thing, and then amusingly they then said, but after that they got into listening to me, and it was like listening to the radio or something, and they enjoyed the banter. So I never really sort of set out to do it like that. And he said something about enjoying the politics, but I'm not trying to be political, I promise, because I don't know enough about politics to be political. Anyway, so the point being is these videos are not short, they're not meant to be, and so they go on for as long as it takes to do the thing. And so if I talk a lot, it's probably partly to keep myself entertained as much as anything. So I'm not really doing it to take a political platform or anything. I've got my little box of things to file here. I've got this sort of ever increasing pot of stuff, either stuff I've ordered in or taken off things, and it's got to get filed somewhere in the Sam's OCD box where all the good little things live. And so I have to file all these other little parts. But while I'm doing it, of course, I have to make sure that the names of things are written on there. So it's all very anally retentive and fiddly, and I quite enjoy it. It's definitely an off-camera moment, that one. Okay, so what I was going to check, actually, before I get out of the way, I'm just going to check the email to see whether John came back to me with a view. I asked him whether he wanted the tremolo to float or flat or whatever. Given the fact that it's come floating, it's arrived floating, then I would be tempted to immediately aim for doing the same thing back. But because I suspect that he hasn't played this guitar, then it could well be that he doesn't want it floating at all. So I've not had an email back, but I do want to get cracking. So I'm going to take it as if it's floating. It's going to stay floating at this kind of level, in which case I'm going to use set the action using the grub screws as normal, but I may have to do some more work on the action, or the bridge action later on when it comes to when I've decided whether it's floating or not. But in the meantime, so my sort of straightforward process is going to be as follows. It's going to be working on the playing action at the bridge first, or the height at the last fret. Now I've been a bit untidy here, so I'm a little bit unsure about where certain things have gone. Oh no. So sorry if it takes a couple of seconds to find things. I've been busy doing other things. So what I'm going to do is I just start with my gauge. I'm going to write down some things that I know about this guitar. Well, the first one is, I'm going to write it on here, Pacifica. It's got zero relief at the moment. It's absolutely dead flat, which would possibly explain why the action's also set quite high. And at the moment it's running at just under 3 millimeters at the 21st fret, and that's the low E, and the high E, it's hard to see sometimes. I say it's about just under 2.5 at the 21st. So there's room to take that down. What did look reasonably good at this point was the sort of rattling a bit for my liking. What looked good was the height of the action over the first fret, but that is going to change slightly because we're going to need to take some of that material off to not only to level it, but also at the same time I'm going to want to be removing those grooves. It's a bonus, we can do the two things together. So just having a look at this. Let's have a look. Come on, you. Yeah, it's over my target. So it's a little higher than I'd want. Excuse me, I'm going to blow my nose. But, as I say, because I know I've got a fair bit of levelling to do, but possibly on the frets, and also some groove removal. I do know that it is going to reduce the fret height, which means, let's say for example, if I aim to cut this to 0.2 of a millimetre over the first fret, then by the time, let's say I aim for 0.2 here, by the time I stand the guitar up and by the time I've leveled the frets and taken some material off them, then I know it's going to be closer to 0.25 than 0.2. So it's just a matter of knowing what position you're in, and just being conscious of the gravity of the neck. Obviously I'm going to cancel it out to some degree by getting it on this neck block in a sort of, I would say, stress neutral sort of position, but there's, to a degree, there's always a little bit of gravity at work. The things I'm going to do is I'm going to set the action here. I'm going to put a little bit of relief into the neck. This guitar is currently strung with 10s, or possibly even heavier. It feels quite heavy. I'm going to, John's instruction in his email was he wanted it to play really easily for a beginner or a newcomer. So given that this has got 10s, I would always think that's a little bit, it may be a little bit heavy for somebody starting out if they want to kind of get into it, get the fingers used to it. So I might go lighter, which also then means that the pull on the neck is going to be even less. So I want to put some relief in here. It's going to reduce when I come to putting 9s on instead of 10s. And if it's not enough when we come back, then I'll just make an adjustment. It's one of those sort of judgment call things. Somebody, Dan in Canada, hello Dan, hope you're doing alright, made an observation a few days ago about a friend of his who's been luthiering for many years, and said that his friend tends to choose a slightly different action at the first fret for every string, and of course that's his fiddly right above. You can do that if you want to, and I think, you know, it's a matter of preference how you like it, how it works well for you. I've not found it necessary to do that. Not that it's wrong, perfectly acceptable. I find an action, people like a different action on the E at this end. Some people like it. My experience of setting things up is I quite like keeping the action the same at both ends for all 6 strings. It gives a uniform kind of ease of operation. But, you know, if you prefer it differently, you know, I think you'd hardly notice it at this end. You may make an adjustment at that end and notice the difference. But anyway, so first thing to do then is to bring the action at this end down to somewhere that I'd like it to be, and let's, given that we'll keep the tremolo right where it is. I'm just thinking, actually, let me think, have I got a set of 9s knocking around, a used set of 9s? Because if I have, it might make more sense to work with those. I've got lots of spare strings, but the pain in the backside problem is that somehow an awful lot of them, I don't know how this can be possible, an awful lot of them don't seem to be long enough. Now, they're possibly long enough. Is it through body? It is. Well, let me see if I can do it, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to save you from being bored to death watching me try to restring a guitar with 9s, because it's quite a boring process. So let me just put this on hold, and then I'll come back hopefully when it's restrung with a lighter gauge, and then we'll use those as the sacrovisual strings for the fret leveling job and beyond. Now I'm just going to put these things all in one place. There's a little crack here, the plastic's been split where the screw's gone in too hard. It's quite common, and it's also at the other end as well, so it's just a matter of, going to have to be very gentle putting these back together again so it doesn't split any further. Maybe try it with a little bit of the old Gorilla super glue. Okay, so just in the back there, standard, what you'd expect, a fairly lightweight alloy tremolo unit. But as I say, I'm going to pluck these off and try and set myself up with some lighter gauge strings. So I'll see you in a minute. Right, so I just jumped ahead on this because the way things are with this guitar, needing to restring it with lighter strings, seemed a good point to give it a clean while I was at it. So it's got to be done in one way or another in the sequence, so I thought I'd do it first. So I don't know if you can see, I've got the knobs off with using a piece of cloth, but underneath the knobs is the usual load of horrible leftover plastic polythene stuff, the pickguard protection stuff, and that very often that just gets, when somebody gets a new guitar, they pull the polythene protection off the pickguard, and then it kind of catches, bunches up underneath the knobs, and it just makes a scratchy, horrible scratchy sound, and it also helps to trap dust under there. So one of the things I like to do is get under there and just give it a sort of slice off, and it comes off really easily, but it means you can clean right up to the edge of the knob shafts. There's no way to talk about parts of a guitar without sounding like a teenage Viz cartoon reader, so you have to forgive me for that. Now what I want to do, or I need to do in this with this guitar is, while I'm here, I'm going to take off the tremolo plate. Because I want to clean it up. I mean, this part of the guitar, excuse me, this part of the tremolo always looks filthy, and when it's second hand, but the nice thing about it is that it's easy to clean. So actually, before I do that, I'm going to take the springs off. I'll take this one out. So yeah, easy enough to clean. You need to get the springs off the back, so I'll just get a pair of pliers. I've just been cleaning the neck with my fingers, and because I'm using this naphtha, it freezes my fingers pretty quickly, so I have to be careful not to overdo it and get kind of frostbite. Okay, so I can't find the pliers I want, but meantime I'll use the pliers that I don't want. They'll probably do. So, just going to pull out the springs for the time being, and that will make the tremolo go slack. And then once I take this off, it'll be easy. Looking at the position of the different saddles on here, it looks like it has been intonated in the past, but it's all a bit samey, so we might find that there'll be a little bit of adjustment to do. But anyway, so this is just, I thought I'd sort of show you this bit because it's the cleaning part, and mostly I tend to do this after I've done the fret leveling, but in this case, because I was changing strings, it sort of made sense to do it now. So I'm doing all the cleaning, dismantling the bridge, putting the bridge back together, and I'll also solder up the jack input and make sure that's working before I put it back together again, or before I stop. So, I see, there's two little plastic bushes in there. I wonder why that is. Is that because it's... I've never seen that. Maybe that's what the what do you call it, Pacifica has, but I haven't seen it before. Little bushes. I wonder why. No idea. Anyway, I'm just going to hang this up for a second while I take care of the bridge components, but I've got to be careful they don't drop out. That's the main thing. So the bridge components, for this you might want to use a thingy, electric thing, because it's quicker, noisier, but it's much quicker to take the components apart. It's quite a lot of effort in some ways, but you do get a really nice clean thing out of it. I'm just checking that on this guitar all of the little grub screws are the same length. On some Fenders you'll find the ones on the E strings are actually lower than the others. What I've also found on guitars, personally on Strats, what I'll do is I will replace these grub screws with much shorter ones, because I hate them sticking out over the top. And I much prefer that the grub screws don't stick out and therefore don't get in the way of palm muting. But on this I don't have a spare set of those, so we'll have to make do with this. And not too, I'm putting them down in order, you can see, but it isn't totally critical that I put them in order, mainly because I'm going to adjust them all individually anyway. So that's the last stage. Okay, so just as a point of principle, so we've got this plate and you can see it's covered in goo, dust and grime from many years. So the simple part is a quick wipe over with naphtha or Coleman stove gas stove liquid. Somebody said, I'm not sure I can even get that in any kind of quantity online. I haven't tried for a while, so it might be worth a search, but I settled on the petroleum ether because it was the nearest thing I could get in any significant quantities. There you go. So immediately that's a whole lot cleaner and fresher looking than it was before. So when we put it back together again, you know, it's kind of look like it's had a bit of loving. There's a couple of ways of doing this. I mean, you can either just have a wet cloth and, you know, a bit of a scrub like this will clean these up. They're not easy to get at because they're these curled metal things, bent metal. So you won't get them too shiny. But you know, you can certainly clean them up. If you want to, you can soak them in naphtha or petroleum ether for a while. It'll probably evaporate before you've got very far. But you can put them in a jam jar or something and shake them about. Don't do it with things like this. They don't like this. The paint on knobs, I found, tends to break down with this stuff if you leave it in there long. So I found that out the hard way. So you don't want to. Anyway, fiddly, but you know, just cleans the thing up a little bit, and it's, you know, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but then again, it's not the world's slowest either. The other reason I recommend doing this sort of fiddly cleaning actually is, it's not because it doesn't make the most difference in the world, but what it does do is it gives you a sort of slowed down routine, which kind of encourages you to check all the components you're working with. So, you know, we may not be anything wrong with these little individual pieces, but you will find out pretty quickly if there is something wrong with them. Or maybe you've got one of these grub screws that's seized in place, for example. You know, and you don't want that. So it's a good time to think about replacing it right now, if that's the case. Okay, so I can reverse all of this and then just put these things together again. As I say, you may find on some guitars that the outside E's are a little bit shorter in the grub screws, and sometimes the spring is longer on the E's and shorter on the G and the low E, because they tend to be pulled further back in. So as I put these together, I'm going to just by eye replicate an intonation pattern that I would expect the guitar to have. It won't be exact, but it's just an approximation. Yeah. So I've been working on my my little Relove Guitars ebook. It's been good fun and hard work. It's surprising how difficult it is once you start putting things into words, and then trying to lay it out. So the good part is that I've got it all pretty much all written. It probably needs an edit, but I've got it written, most of it, if not all. The next part really is to hand it over. I'm hoping to hand it over to one of two friends of Relove Guitars, an old customer of mine, who's going to have a look at it. And these are, well, certainly one of them's, well, they're both designers, graphic designers, so hopefully they might have some good layout ideas. It's interesting that with ebooks, they tend to be normally structured so that the text reflows all the time, depending on what size screen. What size screen you're working with, and that's sort of advantageous that it does that. Obviously, because you know you want to be able to see it on an iPhone and then it reflows and you put it on a, you know, a Kindle or whatever. But with what I've done is, there you go, by the way, it's quite nice, isn't it? With mine, it's really critical that the pictures stay pretty much exactly in line with the words, because as a how-to guide, you know, that relationship between picture and words is really critical. So, what am I doing? I'm going to do a little bit of boring stuff in a minute. Yeah, so that's really important that they line up. So that requires a slightly different formatting, a different approach. So it has to be designed a bit like a print book, and then output in a fixed, let's call it a fixed layout EPUB format, meaning that it contains some instructions to retain the relationship, the positioning relationship between the text and the words all the way through, so that no matter what device you've got it on, you know, one piece will always be in the correct relationship to the text, or the pictures will always relate precisely to the text that they should be next to, which is important if you're going step 2, do such and such. You really want the text to line up. So it'll be great to get, it's either Jay or Carl will have a look at that for me. Thanks very much, guys, for offering. You know, I don't know how much it's going to cost yet, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm really keen to get that done, because it'll be time to get it out there. And what I'm also going to do over the next few weeks, I'm kind of busy, but I'm going to make sure I get the time to do it, is shoot a fresh video for each of the stages that I talk about in the ebook. So currently there's plenty of versions of me doing this stuff, but it's always kind of buried in amongst several hours of other stuff and talking like this. So I'm going to need to make distinct, very clear, probably close up as well, which I don't normally do. So clear, close up, short videos, just limited, one for each of the stages. So I'm looking forward to doing that too. And that would be, I'm probably going to do that as like an extra premium product-y thing, whatever that means. It means it's just going to cost a little bit more to access that. Well, a slightly higher price to get that and the ebook together, but it's my first. Oh God, how am I going to thread that through the block, eh? It's nigh on impossible. Yeah, being my first foray into ebookery, it's quite exciting just to learn what the options are and what the best approaches are, because it's all new to me. So this is where it gets very, very difficult to reuse strings, no matter how good an idea it is to be able to grab hold of some sacrificial old strings and put them into service. You've got to spend a fair bit of time faffing about getting them straightened out, because otherwise they will resist going through the tremolo block and you just won't get them into position. So that's the G possibly done, but I have a feeling we could be trying forever on the B and the E, because they've made a fine old coil. Actually, I don't know if that is, no, I think I've just done the B and this is the G. What I am going to do, this is going I could prove myself wrong here. I'm just going to check what gauge this was in fact. I'm hoping this won't say 0.0010. Oh no, worse yet. Who knows? That's on the 0. 9.5. Do we believe it's 9? Oh, it's saying 9. Okay. I hope. I'll take its word for it. Yeah. So, yeah, ebook time. It's weird once you've been through it and lined up the pictures and done your kind of first layout. As a person putting it together or writing it, you can get heartily sick of it really quickly, because you just see it so many times, and it's very easy to lose any sense of why anyone would want to read it or follow it. I mean, I know that it's meant to be, followed to get a job done, but as a writer, you do get tired of seeing it so many times. there's no real way around that other than to probably to hand it over to someone else to do a sort of design stage. And actually what's great about the two guys who volunteered, or offered their services I should say, not volunteer, that's wrong. The two guys who've offered their services, not only are they both graphic designers, but being interested in guitars too, it means that there's much more likelihood that they're going to, you know, think about the thing intelligently and you know, structure the information the way a guitarist would need to know it. So hopefully I'll get a sort of a lot more creative input from them than I would do if it was just, you know, let's say I outsourced it to a jobbing designer in India or something like that who has no interest in the guitar side of it. So it's great to have found some people kind of within the guitaring world to do it. That's really helpful. Okay, well I'm getting somewhere with the straightenings. Now this is the fun bit where I discover whether in fact they're even long enough to do the job, because that I don't know. I've decided, given that John's a newcomer, I'm going to start with this tremolo block being flattened out and effectively locked. I'm just going to begin, and I'm going to do that because it makes it easier to do the playing action setting, and also then from that point onwards, if that isn't what he wants, then it's easy enough to then go back from that and set it up as a floating trem. But it's probably easier to do it that way around than to start floating and get the perfect action while it's floating. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting all these screws back in to a point where they hold the thing down flat, but there's looseness. You don't want to crank them all the way in, because what they do is they'll then tip up the back. I don't know if you can see that, because this is chamfered, this edge, so I want it to sit flat, and these really, their job is only to hold it from going too far in any direction. And certainly if you're going to float the tremolo and use it as such, then it's going to need that movement. So there's kind of almost no case you'd ever really want to screw these right down to the floor. Okay. It's funny, there's a couple of different ways that people seem to kind of neutralise the tremolo. The way I do it is I just use the springs on, put the springs back on, and then it would help if I had a better pair of pliers to do this, but put the springs back in on, and then I'm going to wind in the claw until the stress is, or the tension's enough to lock the tremolo down, and that's the simplest way. I guess some people kind of like to block it off here so that it's blocked without this part of the guitar being under tension. Personally, if it's a 6 screw system, the load is spread and there's no harm with that. This can handle a lot of tension on here. So the only time I would say to block it off with a piece of wood, if you're really going to disable it, is on a 2-point floating tremolo system, because on the 2-point, if you're locking it down by pulling the strings, putting the springs under more tension, what you get is a huge amount of tension or a huge amount of force on these 2 points, and I've seen lots of them split the wood or split the mounting. So like I say, on a 6 one it doesn't matter, there's very little to, it's very unlikely to split because the load is spread so well. Also, one of the things that's really critical is if you're winding in the claw here, is get a screwdriver that really fits it. Don't try and just carry on with what you had. It's got to be something that goes right in and doesn't move, so that you've also got to get over the claw bits as well. So it's very, very easy to mash up the heads of these things. If you do, then think about replacing it. So to begin with, this is quite solidly down, but we'll see if it pulls up under string load, and if it does, we'll thingy it down even more. While I was here, before I do anything else, I'm just going to take this bit off and see what's going on under here. Why we've got why this has come apart and where the bits have gone. With a bit of luck, I should have some spares. There you go. Yeah, we've lost the outside. Wow, okay. That's an interesting unit. I've not seen one of those before. It's got multiple sort of contacts. Okay, well, we've lost the outside washer and the nuts. I'm going to have to find one of those to go with this. But it shouldn't be the world's hardest thing. Just got to keep track of these little black screws on top of a black piece of rug. Isn't so easy. Now what am I looking for? Okay, my lovely box of OCD stuff. Let's have a dig around in there for a minute. We're looking for, what are we looking for? What was it really? Not springs, we're looking for, it's called nuts, isn't it? Yeah. While I'm here, I'm just going to make sure they're nice and tight, there's nothing moving there, which is good. These nuts are probably too small for this. Oh no, might have one that just works. Just about. Yay! That is. It goes. It's a little bit loose actually. Let's see if I can find something that matches. One more. I think there's one or two that might just do it here. And that one's a bit better. Okay, that's good. See, my OCD box came in handy. What would I do without it? All those hours of putting things away tidily. You wouldn't believe it looking at the state of the shed, but I genuinely put things away tidy in there, honest. Okay, what I've just done is put that away when I really should have got a washer out as well. But I've probably got a spare one in here, in my filing department. Got loads of things in here. And is any one of them a washer? Yes. Actually, we've got plenty of those screws as well. What a pain. A whole set of speed knobs to go in. Get filed away in the knob drawer. All kinds of good things. They always come in handy, like being able to find something. In fact, it's missing on someone's guitar. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this back together for a minute, and I'm going to do up the washer. Actually, that's too much. I need a bit more room. I'm going to do up the washer on the outside. Oh, sorry, do up the nut on the outside, and then I'm going to, just to give it a test before I sort of lock it back or put it back in place. Now I've got a tool to do this up, but if you don't have a tool to do it up, I'd recommend you hold it with your hand while it's out of the body like this. Hold it with your hand and use the adjustable spanner to just kind of turn it and lock it into place. And obviously you've got to make sure that the way you've oriented it, it'll just sit nicely back in place. The other tool I've got works really well. It's designed so that you can tighten up while the thing's still bolted or screwed to the side, so you don't have to have it out like that. But it's you know, it does cost a few quid. There are a couple of different types of tools you can get, but they are a little more expensive, obviously, because they're sort of convenience factor, really. Now this is now magneted to my screwdriver, which is what I don't want. So I'm just going to do this up and then test it. Do it the right way around. Make sure that the holes line up before I get too tight. I just want to make sure this has got a low, very low torque for this sort of operation, so it doesn't strip the threads on anything. So there you go, that's nicely fitted back, and we've got a spare one of these which we don't need. Right, now I have the amplifier for testing, but I have to load it with batteries. While I'm at it, just for your info, if you haven't seen one of these little, if you've never had one of these little micro cube amps, I highly recommend them. I mean, it's not only is it a superb kind of shed amp, but it's actually a fantastic little practice in the house amp. It's I can't even remember what wattage it is. It's very, very small, but it's got a great tone for its size, and it's incredibly convenient. Not least because you can load it up with 6 of these here AAA battery, AA batteries. Sorry, not AAA. The AA. So the AA is kind of stuff you've got all around your home. There's loads of them. There's always AA's around. Particularly if you keep a whole stack of rechargeable ones, like I do. Sorry about the noise. Which are fantastic for everything I do, whether it's sound recording or camera stuff or amplifier stuff like this. And these AA's in this unit, because there's so many of them, will literally last for weeks on end. Now I'm not going to be playing anything just now. What I'm trying to do is make sure the tone, make sure the wiring, or confirm that the wiring is actually working before I carry on with the setup. Because if it's not, then it just makes sense in this sequence to investigate and sort out anything that's wrong. So there we have a nice firm connection. Turn up the sound. What we'd expect. All perfect. It's working as expected. Okay, so as I've mentioned a few times on video, but also on this in my ebook, with any guitar, if you're just doing a quick service or a check over, suspect anything that moves on the guitar. So the real, when it comes to wiring, that moves a lot, these move, and particularly this. The jack is subject to a huge kind of forces leverage from the amount of plugs, jack plugs sticking out. So when the jack plug moves around at all, it'll lever very powerfully, lever the joint there, and it's always likely to be. You can almost always assume that there's going to be something wrong with that in an old guitar. So while I'm here, I'm just going to give these a quick clean off. Remember I said I'm not going to sort of linger too long trying to clean it. I don't want to soak it. I just want to get any immediate sort of surface goo off. And then put them back on. If you want to, you can wash these off with soap and water. That works pretty well. I have some here. I don't have soap. I've just got the water, so I'll leave it at that for now. So I'm just going to put these back to closed position and then line up where I want my sort of one position to be, which I tend to sort of line it up with the screw here, but everybody has their own preference, which doesn't really make much difference. And also, if you're going to do it, put them in the right order. So this is my quick demo now of my little piece of cloth remover. Just put that around the thingy and pull it off. And put it in the right order. So tone down here, one facing up there, volume here. There you go. Right, so again, another little fiddly bit here now. It's going to be trying to get these strings through. I've got my 3 finest ones. I think we've got G, B and E. So let's try the G. Going in through the back. Ooh, can we get through? Yeah, a little bit of a wiggle. The question is, we might be able to get through. Yep, we can reach. That's the main consideration. If we can get through, is it long enough? We're through on that, just. Is it long enough? Just. I think probably just about a good choice with this set of strings. We might just get away with it. They're already going to be weakened by this point in time, so make no mistake, they won't be good for... Oh crap, this is already broken, this top one. I was going to say, they'll only be good for... This one won't even be good for tightening up and doing the fret leveling. So we've got a problem now with this. The top E is, at the moment I don't have one, so I'm going to carry on with the rest of them, and then we're going to have to go on a hunt for something that will do the job at the top E, which is a pain because I don't want to bust up a set just to make a sacrificial string. Now that's one of the problems with it. If it's not straight, it'll just come out sides and piddle around. Right. Damn. It was all going so well until I'm wondering, this looks like it might be... We get that? Yeah, I'll just reach. No. Oh well. I'll now have a look through my used sets and see if I can find one that's an E. What have we got here? Well, no, this is a set from... it's not going to work if it's a set from a Les Paul, that's the problem. And I suspect a lot of these are. Damn. It's a 9. What set is it from? I think I might be in a position where if I test these out and they don't work, I think I may be in the mood to chuck them away, because they just sit here taunting me and not really being any use unless I'm doing a Les Paul. Stay. Unless I'm doing a Les Paul copy, so. And I'm not going to find out unless I unhook the whole lot and try them. So at least you can sort of see that. Actually, that may be. Now it says Les Paul 9s. Right. Well, I'm going to go for trying a couple of these out, and if they don't work, then they're going in the bin because there's no point carrying them around. Over here, I've got one set of 9s ready to use to be put on a guitar, which is going to be for these, and that's it. So I can't afford to waste a string to sacrifice it. So let's see what we've got. Okay, so the thinnest one here. You know pretty quickly whether it will or it won't, and it bloody won't. So that part load is no good. I'm tempted to keep them, but I'm not, because I don't need more than one set. That's silly. That's just cluttering up the place with dead strings. Come on, discipline. Let's see this lot. I don't even know if there's 6 in here. The thinnest one. This is mighty bent. Right. What have we got? No. Oh, yeah, no. I'm trying to think if there's a sneaky way round we can cheat on this, but I don't think there is. No, it's got to come through the body. There's no simple way. So this lot's going in the bin as well. Sorry about this. It's the reality of trying to make it work. In this case, the only alternative, I've got is to string it without the E, but it just means that the tension is going to be less than it actually is, and I prefer not to do that. We want the tension to be as close to real life as possible when we're doing fret leveling. These things just get tangled, and then they stab you just because they can. I'm just wondering, I may have some Harley Benton spares which I've kept that might just, there may be I think there might be an 8mm one which I can use as a sort of replacement. I think I have a couple of sets, and they're very, very cheap to buy, so I'm not so worried about using one of those. But it would be better if this one works, and it doesn't, so this is a Les Paul copy set as well. So quite bizarrely, I don't seem to have anything in the Strat department. It's all Les Paul copy sets. I don't remember doing that many Les Paul copies, full stop. Right, so there's nothing there. I'm going to have to go to spare strings. So these are acoustic strings, but there's some. So there's an 8 and a 12. So I've got an 8, and there I've got. So always you end up with the same ones: the 32s, the 16s. So 8 is the nearest I'm going to get. I don't think I've even got a 10, so 8 will do, just to kind of make the thing work. It's just adding a bit of a load to it, that's all. I might even chuck this spare set away as well. So these are budget strings from Harley Benton, and I put them on occasionally in the past, and they're not that bad at all. They feel a little bit like they've been oiled. I think they have. They've been greased or something to protect them, give them a longer life, because one of the things that you don't want them to do is to just sort of go rusty in storage, but they actually play quite well. So here we are. I'm going to now get our sacrificial strings back on and done up, so we can get on with the fun stuff, all of which depends on it being strung. So, and I don't really have to worry about its tuning stability, so I'm not going to wind on too much. I'm just going to get it on and seated, so we can go from there. So sorry about that little long-winded detour, but it's part of the setup to take care of the electric problems and things like the jack plug. So it's got to be done. And it's step number 3 in the Real Love Guitars 5-step electric guitar setup guide. Can't say anything without it being a bloody great mouthful. But yeah, so step number 3 is dismantle, clean and fix. And then, just because of the way things went, I did that slightly out of sequence really, but that's okay. One of the things that, as I was writing the guide, that became more and more obvious, but just came clearer to mind, was this issue about tuning and tuning stability. And I think, like everyone else, I've been guilty of assuming that, well, not assuming actually, sorry, it's not the right word, believing that expensive tuners equal stable tuners. You know, you've got to spend loads of money, and so I've taken off thousands of those Chinese sort of 2-piece throwaway tuners and binned them. And actually, the more I've kind of done setups, the more I realise that, like Scott Grove says, and you know, I don't want to get into an argument with anyone about whether he's a nice guy or a bad guy. It's not really the issue, but I think I have a great deal of time for his points of view, and he asserts quite clearly that the tuner actually has almost, in fact not almost, it has nothing to do with the tuning stability. And I, sort of 200 setups into this, I have to agree. And it's as much a surprise in a way to me as it is to anybody, because I suppose I was part of that, you know, I was in the world that believed, you know, you've got to get rid of those crap tuners because they're so awful and therefore your guitar will stay in tune better. And actually I've since really learned that the thing that makes all the difference, believe it or not, is the amount of stretch that's left in the strings. That's the kind of #1 factor in determining tuning stability. A second one is how high the action is over the first fret, and actually in a way that it sounds like it's a tuning issue and it's experienced as a tuning issue, but what it really is an intonation issue. But you feel you experience it as tuning because you can't seem to get the guitar in tune, or you can't get it to stay in tune, is what it feels like. So stretch in the strings, first fret action. Another culprit is the amount of string going around the tuner post, and again, contrary to even what I would have believed, you know, that somehow that all of that stuff comes unwound and makes your guitar go out of tune. It's actually not. The reason why you don't want a load of material, a load of coils around your tuner posts here, is because string first and foremost holds unreleased stretch in it, and the more you've got around your tuners, the more stored up unreleased stretch there is to come out over time when it feels like it, when you least want it. Now I'm going to tune this up. Doesn't have to be absolutely precise, and it may break these. Well, we'll get away with it hopefully. Not perfect, but that's fine, we'll tune it up a little bit more. So we now have the, going back to the action now, this is still just rising up a little bit, so I'm going to flip it over again, and I want this flat for the beginning of this process. So I'm going to add a bit more tension on the springs, which is going to flatten out the tremolo. Then I'm going to lower the action to the playing action I want. Let's just check. It's close enough. I'm going to now check the playing action again. Now this will have moved because previously the guitar was in floating mode, so right now it's going to look lower than it currently was, or what we began with. But I'm still going to aim, it's currently about 2.5, I'm still going to aim to go down on this because, excuse the expression, because I want about 1.5. That's my sort of start point really. Some guitars kind of beg you to go even lower than 1.5. I've got to watch my words here. And sometimes it just feels right to do that. Other times it just doesn't, and 1.5 is as effective and low an action as pretty much you really ever want to go. So I'm just a little bit more tweaking down to 1.5, and I can see that that's already a substantial improvement or alteration. I'm just going to put my laser beam specs on so I can really see the last these dimensions. It's way up. Now taking the action lower, the slightly downside on this is it's going to stick these little grub screws even higher into your hand. So John, I would recommend, if you like to palm mute the guitar, it's probably a good idea to go and look for a set of shorter ones, which you can just replace all of these with using the 1.5mm Allen key, and once you've replaced them all, you'll get rid of these posts sticking up, and it's a nice way of making it suitable for palm muting without the scratchiness. So it's a tiny little investment that does make a big difference. So I'm just going across here to make as close to 1.5 as I can on all of them. If I do that, one of the benefits of doing that, I suppose, is that because I'm measuring the distance here, it'll map the radius of the guitar. So the radius is a curve this way, and if I keep 1.5 on all of these, I'm going to have a set of strings that also follow that radius. You don't need, I don't need a set of separate radius guides to make sure that I've followed the radius. So an extra head-mounted torch would probably be handy here to get a close look at the measurements, but I need to be going the other way, Sam, not this, not up, down. Okay. So slow and fiddly a bit, but we eventually get there. And you can double check it once you've done it once, run across and look at it with the beady eye, and you'll see which ones are uneven or not following a nice smooth pattern. And that one's just, well, it's kind of low, but I'm just going to make it consistent with all the others. 1.5. Okay, so that's all starting to feel different. I said this on most videos, but the thing that's really surprising when it comes to changing your action is the thing that has the biggest impact on it feeling tiring to play, a guitar feeling tiring to play, is the action at this end as opposed to the action at this end. Of course, it doesn't help if the action is high at the bridge, and of course it'll mean playing guitar breaks and fretting chords, holding chords down up here will be hard. But the really tiring bit for a newcomer, for example for John, who's new to playing the guitar, the really tiring bit will be the action down here. And if it's above 0.5, it's not only going to be very, very hard to play, particularly when you get down to playing a chord like F or a B. It's going to be hard to play, it's going to be tiring, but also above 0.5 over the first fret you start to get these really horrible intonation issues which make the guitar sound permanently out of tune, particularly when you're playing open chords. Okay, so the point here is not to get it perfectly in tune, but to get it roughly in tune so that it's in under normal tuning load. So whatever forces that you would have now on the guitar when you're playing it are now at play on the neck, and those forces are a combination of curvature, it's pulling the neck into a curve, but it's also compressing it end to end. And it's going out of tune very quickly because having just put the strings back on, they've got, particularly on that E, there's a lot of slack. Okay, so that's the first bit done, and it's a really nice low action now down at this end. I also cleaned the neck, so that's now looking quite dry because it's had some of the oils taken out of it with the solvent, but we'll put oil, a little going over with oil towards the end when I put the new strings on. So we've got the action down here. Now we want to check the relief in the neck. So I'm going to put it under support, and then I'm going to capo off the first fret and hold down the last fret. And what I'm looking for is to see what the gap is around the 8th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's approximately halfway between this point and that point. That's what you're looking at. As I expected, there's absolutely there's no space at all underneath that string. It's touching the fret. That's not ideal. We want some curvature, a little bit of curvature in there, simply because the strings need to describe a bigger movement in the centre where they're loosest than they do at the ends where the movement is very small. And if it's totally flat, there's a much greater likelihood that the strings will bash against the frets. And to allow the string load to curve the neck a little bit, I need to slacken off the truss rod, which is to put my Allen key in and crank it counterclockwise as far as you can see. So that way. So I'm going to give it a sort of about 180 degrees turn, I think. It's quite difficult because of the strings being in the way, but give it a little bit of a turn, and it may take an unknown amount of time to take effect. But again, I can just put the capo on. Am I seeing any gap? Blimey, almost none so far. It may well be the case that I can make quite a lot of adjustment. In fact, take this off until it feels like it's almost loose, which it's currently. I think we're just about that point anyway. Right, we're about as loose as we can be there. It's really fiddly and hard to use this. So, John, the issue here now is that your neck is the way it is because I think we're unlikely to get any more curvature out of it. And that just means that the neck is kind of, I don't know whether you describe it as too stiff. It's not bending in response to the string loading, and as a result we've got a one-way truss rod in there. We can't keep cranking it this way and have it curve the neck. It's basically supposed to counter the curvature of the strings, and it's not really doing it. Well, sorry, there is not enough, the strings aren't putting enough load onto the neck to put any curvature in it. If we were to tighten it up, then all that would happen is we would get a hump in the neck, and it would be even worse. So we're going to have to make it work as best we can with a tiny little gap now. There wasn't before, but it's microscopic. We're going to have to make it work as good as we can with that. What that might mean, well, it might mean that we have to be even more careful to get this perfectly level. It's going to demand us being more accurate with the fret leveling. And if that doesn't work, and we may not find it hitting. We might, if we don't like it and it's hitting the frets a little bit, then we might have to take the action up a fraction more than I would ultimately like it, but it is only microscopic. So I'm going to start with where it is and hope for the best, but so many times you see a truss rod loose and there's almost no curvature in the neck courtesy of the string loading. It's just the tiniest, almost none on the treble edge, but that's the luck of the draw. I mean, I suppose that's what you get with a cheaper brand or cheaper model of guitar. The strikeout rate on neck adjustments is probably a little bit higher, but it's not universally just the budget guitars that do this. You can sometimes find more expensive guitars that just don't have any adjustment possible. There's not enough bend. What I don't suggest is that we load it with ultra heavy strings to try and get that bend into it, partly because once we fret level this, think it'll play, and I think it will play very light, which is what you want. But it is, you know, I would have preferred a tiny bit more relief or curvature in the neck. But for a beginner's guitar, we'll make it play very lightly, and we'll see where we get once we've leveled the frets. So 2 parts of the operation done. Action set down here. As much relief as we can get, given the condition of this guitar and the fact that there's no more adjustment for us in that truss rod. And now I just want to make sure that the the slots, or actually the way I'd express it is I'd want to make sure that the first fret action is exactly where I'd like it, to make it play as lightly as possible. And the way I would check this is to get my feeler gauge and put it underneath the strings and see what I've got. Now, if I start with a 0.3 of a millimetre, which is a nice action for this kind of setup, what I know is that, as I said, it's going to be a bigger gap by the time I've fret levelled, and possibly a tiny fraction bigger by the time I stand the guitar up in playing position. So saying 0.3 is very conservative. I might end up at 0.35 when it's all said and done. Equally, if I'm feeling fruity, I might go for 0.25, in which case I know it'll end up at 0.3. So let's do that, because we're going to need a really precise action on this if we've got hardly any relief. So I'm going to set out my nut files. These I've shown in my step-by-step guide how to do this with a much cheaper tool, which is actually very effective, but it kind of freaks out the purists a little bit. And you can use one of these triangular diamond coated files. They're very cheap. You get them in, there's a Draper one, you get them in a set of 6 or 8 of them for about £7 so it's sub £1 tool, and you actually can cut all your nut slots with it, because you just stop when you get the right height, and then if you've got a lot of material above, if the string's sitting quite a way in, then you can reshape the nut. By the time you've reshaped it to leave just enough of a groove for the string to sit in, you've lost all the V shape that this tool created anyway. So it's not a bad way of doing it if you're on a real budget. I'm going to use the files that I've got here since I've got them. And the way I particularly do this is, and again this is slightly, it's not, I'm taking 2 of the strings off, so we're not in the same tension anymore, but what I'm looking for is with this string play. Now this shows me that this particular string, the D, is actually lower than 0.25, and it's probably about 0.2, just on 0.2. So if we were to do the rest of them on just on 0.2, which we can do, we've got to be very careful. It just means that we're going to get a very low action all round. So I bring it up to tension. The reason I want to put it under tension is because I want the string to sit as cleanly in the slot as possible, so that it doesn't catch halfway down and make me trick me into carry on cutting. See, I think these are very close to being on the mark already. This one's got a tiny fraction to do, so I just get my my file in sequence and just do a little list of, that's as close as I want to go with that. Tune it, and then get the bottom E in. So we're really going for a low action at the first fret, but that's kind of dictated by how one of these was already cut. So we're just we're bringing everything to that level. The alternative would be to bulk out that slot, build it up so that it's back up, and it's perfectly doable. You do it with bicarbonate of soda, or you can do it with bone dust and in both cases super glue, very runny super glue, low viscosity super glue, and that makes a nice sort of cement that will allow you to recut. So those are those three done. We're working to an incredibly low action. So John, for your purposes, this guitar will feel effortlessly light to play down this end. It's probably lower than I would normally go, but I'm conscious as well that we're going to take quite a bit off these frets to get the grooves out of them. So it's going to be bigger than 0.2 by the time we've finished. Now we're at a very similar level now with the G string matron, and very easy at this stage to overcut. And if you do, you know, you've got, well, three real choices. If you overcut, you can either take off the nut and shim it, so you raise the whole nut slightly up and then recut downwards, or you can replace the nut altogether, or you can use the bone dust or bicarbonate of soda dust and low viscosity super glue trick to build it back up. So there's quite a few options, and I always say that for the amount of improvement this makes on your guitar, you really should give it a go, and you should have standing by a new nut standing by, because it's absolutely worth it. You know, if a new nut costs you a £5, totally worth it to have a new nut to improve the guitar so much. Small price to pay, and you know, I'd want you to be confident and feel quite free to give it a go. That's so close, I'm not going to do anything with that one. So there we have the action set to what's currently just over 0.2. The result of it is a very, very low playing action. Not at all bad, considering we haven't done any fret leveling yet. So, you know, slightly, little tiny zzz. So generally it's pretty good. I'm really surprised. That's a very good all-round level for the neck, but we're going to make it just that little bit more accurate. What I'm going to do now, and this will be a bit boring so I'll switch off, I'm just going to take my marker pen and with a bit of, I could slack all the strings off, but I'm sort of so nervous about tuning them all back up again. I'm sort of going to do it the lazy way. I'm just going to go through and mark all the frets, the tops of all the frets with permanent marker pen, and do it the way that I don't have to slack these things off. I'm just nervous that they're so old now, these strings, that they're going to break, and if they break I really have run out of spares to sacrifice. So I'm going to take the slightly longer way. Once I've got them all marked up, then I'll come back and show you the fret leveling process using the world famous banana tool, Morris's banana as I like to call it. So see you in a minute. Okay, so back with the fret leveling part of the game, and this is a really elegant thing. The fret leveling tool is an adjustable ordinary truss rod. Probably would have been better if it was in this neck working instead of the one we've currently got in there, but truss rod and an Allen key that will let us do adjustments. I can do a bit by hand, but we might need that. And then I've got 3 little feet, which are 3 brass domed nuts, which are all the same size, and a little plastic square block for a string spacer. So those parts are the core bits. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with I'm going to put the little brass nuts standing equally spread across the neck in the space between the E and the B strings. I'm just going to start by trying to find a midpoint and make sure that they're spaced equally. Okay, so once I've done that, what I'm then going to do is mark with a bit of tape the point at which the brass feet should sit. I'm just using the corner of the tape to point at the spot, so I can get the next time I come into the next strip, if you like, I can position the brass feet exactly there, and I don't have to re-measure it. It's just a little time saver. So once that's done, now the secret of this game is to tune the curve of this rod to the curve of the neck. That's not really going to take very long on this, because we know that the neck isn't actually curved at all, hardly at all. Now this doesn't work because that's too far apart. How did I manage that? Because I didn't even think about the length of the damn thing. Right, let's do this again. Sorry about that. I overestimated the length of my rod. I told you this is a Finbar Saunders day out, for those of you who have ever been Viz fans. So let's just reposition so I know where things should sit, get it right each time. Okay, so that's the first thing. You've got to make sure that your truss rod sits across, or the 3 feet spread the whole length of the truss rod. Now I place this down on here, and what I'm looking to do, this is problematic, this is really trouble. What I'm looking to do normally would be to use these 3 feet to map the curve, and the way I do it is by holding down this one as a sort of an anchor pivot, and then bring the truss rod down onto the other 2. And if it touches the end one first, it means that there's more of a curve in the neck than there is in the rod, because if it touches here first, then there's a clear space in the middle. So we tune a bit more curve into the rod, and then we try again. And if it touched the middle first before the end, then the rod is a little bit too curved, and it's more curved than the neck. And we're obviously aiming to get the 2 of them to contact together. Now the difficulty with this is because the truss rod has virtually no curve in it at all, we're going to be leveling with an almost flat file, and actually this by default, this is where it's a little bit of a challenge for me, because this file by default hasn't got is just almost slightly curved. Now in a way it sounds strange, but that's probably a good thing, because if we don't physically have a curve in the neck, maybe we'll just introduce a tiny bit of curvature by using the tool exactly as it is. So we can say that, okay, it's a little bit over curved compared to the neck, but the truth is, if the neck won't curve anymore, this tool will add a little bit of curvature in it. So practically speaking, it'll take a fraction more from the frets in this area than it will take from these. But actually we kind of need that, because otherwise we've just got a dead flat fretboard to live with. So I'm going to begin with that. I'm going to take this resting state rod with its tiny bit of curve in, and I'm going to use it as is. I'm going to drop out the E string over the edge, and I'm going to just spread the strings down here with the plastic spreader, and you can see there's room now to get into this track where the E string would pass. Now the idea now is to use the file just with gravity, and let it come up and down over those frets, and we want to cover all of them. So the truss rod is a little bit shorter than the neck, or the fretboard if you like. So what I want to do is keep it running backwards and forwards a little bit. Now I also need to iron out some of these grooves in the lower fret, so I've got to do enough that it will allow me to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rub a bit more and then stop, and we'll evaluate what's happening. Now, as I said, this is a tiny bit different from standard because it's doing the same job. It's cutting metal on the frets so that we get a relative level set of frets relative to each other. And I can see that it's cutting on most of the frets except it's cutting all the way up to here. And it's not quite cutting the first one very much, but I can see it's cutting the second and third, and I can also see the dents there showing up as black marks where the pen is still in the kind of depression. So it's cutting a bit more in the middle. I can see that, as I predicted, because the tool is fractionally more curved than the fingerboard at the moment because of the, unfortunately, because of the inflexibility or the lack of curvature in the neck. So I'm just going to keep on going. I'm going to help it down with a little bit of pressure, not too much, but just keeping the end so it stays in contact with the tool. Now, the nice thing about doing this in the fully strung position that we're doing now is, and it's I think I've got 400 grit sandpaper on this tool on the bottom. The nice thing about it is it's obviously very slow. It doesn't take loads of metal off like a conventional fret leveling file, which is good in certain circumstances, but can be really kind of over aggressive. This takes it off very slowly, but what's nice is that it also lets us put the string back in and physically test it out in the playing positions. So there's nothing wrong with all of those. We've also got to make sure that it plays on the bends, because often if these are uneven over here, then bending the strings into them can run into problems. But I'm going to stop there because that actually plays pretty well. So I'm just going to now move the little feet back into the next line between the B and the G to do the next strip, if you like. What's nice about doing it actually, let me think for a second. No, I'm going to do a little bit more. Sorry, strike that, because although it's playing well, it still has some dents at this end. So the dents, or the damage to the fingerboard from wear, creates those low spots, if you like. And the thing about fret leveling is what you do is kind of dictated by the low spots, or the low frets, or the low parts of your frets anywhere across the neck. Because it's all about relative levelness, what it means is that a high fret is easy to understand. It's a fret that's kind of maybe not been hammered in correctly, and it's sticking out high, and therefore it gets in the way of the fret before it, or several frets before it, so you can make that note play when in fact you want a lower note. It's kind of easy to understand. That's a high fret. But if you have a very low fret, because it's relative, it makes the frets either side of it effectively high. So you really always, it's worth thinking that, remembering that you're really always working to the low frets, because they make other frets high. So in the case of wear, plain wear, like down on these grooves down at the first, second and third frets, what I'm doing now is I know that the level, we've pretty much got the level achieved already, but I'm carrying on going because my other aim is to remove those indentations so that we kind of refresh that whole fretboard down there, so it's kind of like new again. So technically we're taking off more from the frets up here than we need to level it, but we've kind of switched into, we've got the level achieved. Now we're sort of aiming for cleaning up this wear from use. Okay, if that makes sense. Now I also have to make a judgment call with that, because there comes a point in the cleanup where I can predict, or I can gauge, that whatever little dent is left will come out with the rest of the polishing process, so I don't necessarily need to keep on working with the fret leveling file. So again, I think we're at that stage now, so I'm going to let's now move to the next track. And again, we'll face the same challenge in this track, which is that I think there's a little bit more curve on this edge of the guitar, but we're going to find there's hardly any curve to begin with, and hardly any relief. And then we've also got the challenge of once we've got it level, we've still got these grooves that we're going to want to get rid of. So I'm going to start again with my left hand anchor, and this one's it's telling me it's quite clearly touching the middle first, so it's very, very flat. But as I said, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to push the string off to one side and then out of the way with the spreader. And again, because there's a bit more of a curve in here, I don't mind that it's going to take a bit more out of the middle, because we actually need that. And if the neck isn't giving it to us, then the truss rod can sort of help achieve it for us. Now, with a guitar like this where the truss rod is not really doing anything, then it's probably, as a budget guitar, it's probably not worth trying to even consider replacing it, because to replace a truss rod you'd have to remove the fingerboard, steam away the fingerboard and take it off to get the truss rod out and replace it. But the problem is, as I say, it's not really the truss rod that's at fault. I guess it's the stiffness of the neck. It's not really responding to the load of the strings. A little bit of a buzz down there, so still a bit more to do. It's not really a buzz, I would say it's just a little bit of a zing. It's not quite as clean as I'd like it to be. Again, I'm conscious of where the grooves are from playing, the playing wear down this end, down the nut end, and also conscious of where I'm likely to be able to stop and just get the remaining groove out with the sanding process. So again, judgment call. You don't want to take any more than you have to. If, as I say, if the flatness of the neck is just too much and it doesn't play well enough, then we will lift the action a tiny fraction. And that's the price we'd have to pay for there being no relief in this neck. So I'm going to just go down the next track now. Again, now this is finally, it's still pretty much on the flat side, but it's not quite now as it's not quite as mismatched. We're starting to get a little bit of a curvature, tiny bit of relief on this side, and it's quite common, I found, that you get a different amount of relief on either side of the radius. Sort of boggles your mind when you try and imagine the shape of it, how one side can be flatter and the other side can have that bowl shaped or concave shape to it, the relief, but it can. It is a bit confusing. So again, as you're doing this, you're thinking about achieving first of all a relative level. That's your first target, and then once you're confident you've got a relative level and the notes play fairly cleanly, and I'm looking at the grooves, and they tend to be only on the first 3 strings really, so it's not usually a problem after that. So a little bit of zizz there, and that would be cured by the relief, you see. If you just press the neck, if you can, like press it against something, you get rid of that little zizz. It comes back when the neck flattens out, and that's the downside of not having a curve in it. But given that, it's still playing pretty well. I'll do a little bit more, but not too much. And if it comes to it, then I'll raise the action a tiny smidgen, rather than try and take too much more down with the leveling file. I'm going to see if I can just make this little bit here a fraction more level. I try to, well, in my ebook writing, I was working out a way to describe the overall difference in effectiveness between levelling the frets with the neck off and passively flattened out using the truss rod. It's not too bad, a little bit better. The difference between levelling it with the neck flattened passively and the neck under load like this, and I think the way I just thought was a good way to describe it is that when you flatten the neck out passively with the strings off, then you're pretty confident the neck's flat, and then you level it with a fret leveling file. I would say you get, at that point, you get 100% accuracy. So you can safely say that your frets are completely level. Then, when you put the guitar, you put the strings back on and put the guitar at neck under load, you have the frets are more or less level, but you have another effect working on the frets which you didn't have when you leveled it, and that's compression, which slightly puts them out compared to when you were leveling it passively. So I would kind of say, just for argument's sake, that takes your relative levelness from 100% down to, let's say, 95 or 90% for ease of kind of description. By comparison, when you level with the strings on and the neck with the compression already in it, there's no surprises later on when you take the strings off and restring it. You're back to exactly where you were. So when we get 100% levelness now, because it has the compression working at the point that we level it and it's not introduced later on, it means that we'll also get 100% now, like the other method, and we'll retain that 100% later on when we restring it, because we've already accounted for the effects of compression on the relative positioning of the frets. If you get what I mean, there's a logic to it, that's what I'm trying to say. And I found that to be borne out by the kind of practical experience of playing. Just that little bit more accurate doing this. Pretty good. Not a lot more to worry about on this this neck now. So the real thing for me will be, once we get this, get the frets reshaped and polished back up, whether it plays nicely as is, or whether I will need to just tweak the action a little bit higher so that we don't have any kind of problems with the flatness of the neck. Okay, so this is the last strip, well, second to last strip, because the last strip will be, if I can just get this to stay out of the way, last strip will be on the far side of the low E, this side of the low E. Again, almost no curve at all, in fact virtually none, so I'm going to just take down any significantly high frets and possibly just take a little scallop a little bit more out of the middle with this slightly curved file, fractionally curved. I mean, it's hardly curved at all, but it's just enough to cut a little bit more here, which is, as I say, what we want, even though it's a tiny bit artificial. But Otherwise, if you otherwise have to accept that there's no real curvature in this neck that's possible, then what you'd sort of be condemned to is a higher action than we've currently got. So we're getting away with really nice low action at both ends. That one needs a little bit of work, as expected. So into the final stretch. Again, I'm not going to adjust the curve. There's no more adjustment we can make, so I'm working with what we've got on the file as it is. And again, there goes the spreader. Again, it's about making sure, first of all, that any obviously high frets are out of the way. Then we get to the sort of fine tuning, which is, okay, we're going to cut a little bit more towards the centre than at the edges, which is very acceptable given the dynamic of the neck. And then once we've done that, we should have a nice overall level, and then those notes should play cleaner now than they did a few minutes ago, but we will see. A bit better, a little bit more to go. Again, it's entirely possible that we get to a place with this track where we can't get rid of the last couple of bits of buzzing, just because this is the string, or these last couple of strings are the ones that really need the wide spinning, rotating space, and they haven't got it with a flat neck with 0 radius. So we may just get away with that by carving this extra little bit of space down the middle here, and we'll see. It's no harm being done, because we're also resurfacing the frets as well, so it's a sort of bonus. I'm just looking now that down in the G slot there's still a little bit of a dent there, which may not come out with the polishing. So again, I have to make a judgment call. Do I want to go back into that track? That's not bad at all. That's got rid of most of that buzz. Do I want to go back into that track down here? Just trying to feel these grooves. Feel the groove, man. Do you know what? If I did, I'd have to do them all. Let's do them all, just a couple of more swipes each. Just see if I can. And remember, the curve is pretty much the same all the way. I'm just going to try and allow it to press down a tiny bit at the end here, because I'm sort of trying to help these grooves vanish as well. And we've got a pretty good relative fret level everywhere else. Yeah, I don't want to go too much further, to be honest. I'm going to give it another. I'll go through these 3 and then I'm going to stop and take it from there. To be honest, it's better to have a little bit of grooving, albeit far less than we had before. I'd rather have a tiny shadow of it than just keep ploughing away to try and force ourselves to get rid of all of it. You've got to judge what's best overall for the guitar, as opposed to just be led by one particular outcome. It's balance always. Okay, so it's this G that's got the most sort of biggest gouge, if anything. And I'm going to basically work this end, the effort on this end, and let the other end a little bit looser. It's a nice way of doing things with this tool. Okay, so I'm going to leave that little dent in there, and right, pleased to announce that I'm just going to put these bits away to fight another day. But what I'll do, just before we kind of take the strings off and move on to the next bit, is really It's obviously not very much in tune, but okay, so it's all playing. We've got it down to a very nice light action at this end. We've got a very nice low action at the other end, and not quite got as much relief in it as I would like. So all that's going to happen now is I'll carry on this basis, and if it doesn't feel quite right by the time I get to the end, all that will happen is I'll just raise this action a tiny fraction just to lift the strings a bit away from any of this flatness that we've got in the neck that we can't do much about. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a break. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take off all the strings now. I'm going to I won't show you this on video, you can see it on loads of other videos, but I'm going to take the strings off, give the neck a quick clean down. I'm going to mask it off with masking tape ready for the next stage, and I'm going to mark up all the frets again with black marker, and when that's done I'll come back and show you the next stage. Hey, right, magically the guitar is covered in masking tape to protect it from sandpaper treatment it's going to get in a minute, but also to keep dust out of the pickups and stuff. So what we're going to do, I'm going to use the medium jumbo side of this concave fret recrowning file from StewMac, and I'm going to use it to just take off the sharp shoulders of the frets. Now we've flattened them a little bit in the leveling process, they need to be reshaped, because if they're flat they won't intonate properly, and also they'll be rough to play. So this process takes off the edges, the shoulder of the fret, reduces the flattened spot down, and I aim to leave a thin black line of marker pen down the middle, which means if I can do that, that means I've rounded off the fret without taking any more of the height down, which is what I want to do. I don't want to introduce any more unevenness back into this, having already levelled it. So this tool's pretty good for this. It's not essential, this tool. You can do this with a three-sided file that looks something very much like this one here. We can do the same job by running the file along the edge and then bringing it over, rounding it over towards the top, and then on the other side. And again, same technique, you stop, leaving the top of the fret untouched, and it'll do the same thing, but this is kind of quicker, which is why you pay your money for it, really. It's quicker, and I'd say about 3 to 4 times faster to do this way. I quite like doing it the other way as well. Believe it or not, it's actually a little bit more accurate using the three-sided file, because you make absolutely sure with that file that you don't touch the top at all. With this, you tend to always just clip the top a little bit. It's almost impossible to do it without taking a fraction off the top, but it's so small it doesn't really make any difference to the overall level. But you know, if you want the slightly quicker, sort of easier to use option, this costs 60 or so pounds, but it's lasted forever. I've had it for maybe 150 setups so far, so it's definitely worth the money. Whereas the other one cost about £8, You probably get it even cheaper than that, but I paid about £8 on Amazon for it. So it depends on your budget and how many you're going to do. If you're going to just do 2 or 3 of your own guitars, then get the cheaper thing. If you're going to do 2 or 3 of your guitars now and another 2 or 3 when you get some new guitars in a few years' time, then maybe it's worth buying this one. The more the fret's been flattened in the first place, the more time it takes to reprofile it. So I'm whizzing through these because they haven't, at that point, they haven't really had that much flattening done to them, which means they weren't that uneven to begin with. There's probably a few more were uneven right at the end here, but this part's nearly done, and then we're into the sort of final part of the fret leveling, which is to sand and polish up the frets so they're ready to play again. And of course we also have to do that without taking any more height off them, because we definitely want to preserve this overall relative levelness that we've achieved. That's the whole point of the operation. Okay, so that's that done. So the next bit is, save you from having to watch it, but the next bit is good old fashioned hard work. I'm going to use 3 grades of paper, if I can find them. I'm going to use a 600 grit, 1200 and a 1500 to be starting with, and I can find where it's gone. So use a few pieces of each of these. Let me just get a rule of tearing it up. And so I'm going to sand my way through these 3 different grades of paper using my fingers sometimes and a sponge block some of the time as well. And then once I've done that, I'll shift on to a micromesh set of papers, which will take me right the way through to finer sanding than I can get with these papers, and by the time I've got to that, it'll be almost playable, and then I'll finish off with a Dremel run with some Autosol car chrome cleaner stuff, and that will be the sort of the final step, and by the time I've got to that, it'll be very, very shiny. So the first, the harder with a fiercer grit, like the 600 here, it's going to be the one that just cleans up the last bit of the grooves that were down on those lower frets. So it'll be this paper that will do that, and I'm going to pull out 4 pieces of that, plonk them there. Then of the other 2 grades, I'm going to pull 2 each of those, the 12 and the 15. Put them in line so I know which the order is. I'll store these bits for later on, and then I've got my micromesh set, and these things are really useful. They last forever, well, they last for a long time. These are getting a bit worn now, but they do last for many services, and these go from 1500, sort of where the paper leaves off, right the way through to 12,000, and that will be the sort of the last of the sandpapers, but it will be right into polishing at that stage. You won't even see it taking any material off. So I won't bore you with this, I'll stop in a second, but just to give you in principle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with a combination. I'm going to start with using my hands to clean off or sand off the frets to make sure I'm getting all the black marker off. I move all the way all the time across this, so it's constantly covering different parts, but generally I'm pretty even with it, and I'll just do the first couple by hand, and then I'll switch over to using the foam block, which I've cut with a bit of a pointed edge, and then the idea really is to keep the pressure down so that the paper rides up and over the frets. That's all I'm really aiming to do, rather than scrape along the top, which will, the danger there is you'd reintroduce a kind of a flat spot on the top, which we don't want. So it's pretty noisy. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to just dive into that. It's probably about 20-25 minutes work, something like that. And when you see this again, I'll have done all the sanding through the stages, and I'll also have done the autosol Dremel bit, and it'll be covered in dark goo the way it does when you use the autosol. And then I'll peel all the stuff off, and we'll be ready to string it and intonate it, and that'll be pretty much the end. Okay. Okay, yeah, look at this muddy mess. So that's the autosol Dremel stage done, and you can see it makes a fair old mess, but we can get all of that goo off with our solvent and a cloth. Yeah, it's quite a lot of muck, but the beauty is, underneath all that slime, the frets are now level, freshly re-profiled, reshaped and polished to a lovely high shine, nice finish. So, sorry about the noise about all of this, but this is the enjoyable bit now. We're on the kind of home straight, if you like. So just pull all this off. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to quickly wipe this down. Just want to get the goo off the front of this. We'll give it all a good wipe down anyway, but just pulling this slime away. Dust gets kind of all over the plastics to begin with. So we have to be quite thorough getting it cleaned off. Once we get there, it's a nice lovely finish. Okay, so I'll just hold off cleaning that for a minute. And the idea of the way I like to put masking tape on is to make these little tabs around the back, so it becomes pretty easy to get off again. Just pull all of this off. So the next stage will be to give this a quick scrub over. Then I'm going to oil the fingerboard with some nice lemon oil. Then I'm going to restring with new Ernie Ball 9s and spend a little time getting all the stretch out of the strings. And once that's done, then it will be the final step, which will be to intonate each string. And personally, I enjoy doing that much more on a Strat style guitar than I do on a Les Paul copy, because it seems to be much more responsive on a Strat. Much easier to do as a result. So this stuff is gooey. It will come off fairly easily. Sometimes it sticks down a little bit more than you want it to. You have to scrape it off. But generally speaking, it all comes off quite easily in big strips. There we go. And it's kept the fingerboard not only clean but also safe from abrasion and hasn't been damaged in any way by the Dremel. So I'm just going to switch to a slightly cleaner rag to go over the fingerboard here, just to make sure I can get it nicely cleaned off. Liberal use of solvent, getting all the marker pen off now, just make sure there's none left on there as they go up and down here. You know, you can see there's still some pen that's coming off. It's making the cloth go nice and mucky. Again, switch sides and just get in there and clean everything off. Okay, and I'm going to just get in there in the arms or the horns if you like, and then down the back here, make sure it's all cleaned up, and then on the headstock, because that also picks up a fair bit of dust as well, so just make sure that's all clean as well. Okay, so fun part, let's chuck away some of this sandpaper. It's quite intensive on the sandpaper front, I'll go through a lot of it. Nice set of new strings. Right, open the packet, here we go. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to get all of these strung. I'm leaving the tremolo bridge in the locked down position at the moment, and I'll leave that until I hear back from John, and if he wants it floating, we'll set it floating, otherwise we'll leave it as is. For working, we have a more stable tuning a little bit, but again, it's one of those things. The idea that if you get the other parts right, the no slack, if you get the nut slots cut right so they don't pinch and they don't hold lock the string in, then altogether you should be able to use the tremolo and it be perfectly in tune. So it's not the case that it automatically puts it out of tune, but I think with most budget guitars, or most guitars that beginners own, I think those other aspects are usually so dodgy or so faulty that it is true to say that the tremolo is kind of almost always puts it out of tune, and which puts people off using it because it's unfeasible. If it's, the moment you touch it, it's out of tune. You naturally don't want to have anything to do with it. So I've got I think the marlin inside that I refretted and set up. I think that stays nicely in tune with the tremolo. I didn't set it as a floating tremolo. I set it as a down only, but it gives a nice little bit of vibrato without putting it out of tune, so it is possible. Okay, so there's my strings all the way through. Again, let's get rid of the bag is so full up now, it's coming very close to empty time. So I'm going to string these in a sort of time-honoured fashion, just a way I like to do it. Everybody has their own way. I learned this from somebody on a forum. So I like to send the string all the way through first. I'm just about to do all of that without oiling the fingerboard, as I usually do, get carried away. So while I'm at it, get my rose oil, and I'm going to give the fingerboard a nice going over, so it kind of takes away that dry look, and tempted to say the word hydrates it, but it doesn't really hydrate it, does it? It oils it, simple as that, but it makes it look richer and less parched. So it does dry out again fairly quickly, so rub it in a little bit to begin with, and then that will probably dry in a few minutes. Again, that takes some more of the goo that's on there. The last few bits of marker pen come off nicely with that, and once that's done, we're ready to string. So it's back to the process. I make sure that the ball end of the string is up through the block completely. Sometimes it can catch halfway, and before you start tightening, you need to make sure it's all the way through, like it is now. And then when we get there, I grab it tight and then pull back a whole fret's worth, and then hello, and then just start to wind on. Hang on a second, I will stop the film in a second now. Thank you. So I'm winding it on. I'll be in now, thanks. So the first time round I go over the loose string, and the second time it comes round I bend the loose string up and make sure that the held string goes underneath, and then it locks off with just that much tied on, and then I will snip off, if I can find the things, well, I'll just use a big one, then I'll cut off the excess at that point there. So ding, there we have it. So that's on. I'm going to pause while I go and have something to eat, and I'll see you in a minute. I'm very sorry, and the sound comes back. My mistake, I forgot to press the button. Anyway, so I'm just, you could see what I was doing. I'm just threading the strings. And once I've got the strings all tied up, done up, then I'm going to take the stretch out of them. And once I've taken the stretch out of them, then I'm going to give it intonate it. And then once it's intonated, I'm just going to play it for a bit, indoors probably, and just see whether, given the fact that it's got no relief in the neck, I just want to make sure that it plays okay. Because in a way it may be that because of the lack of relief we may just have to raise the action just a fraction more than I would ideally like it, if all things were equal and there was the truss rod, not the truss rod, the truss rod works if the neck had a bit more bend in it. There's nothing we can do about that, so but we'll see. So either which way it's going to be, I'm sure, John, you're going to notice it feels a lot lower an action than before, even if it's not quite as overall low as I'd like, but okay. So before I tighten the strings up much more, I'm just going to put some lubricant into the nut slots to make sure they're as slippy as can be, and I do that with my powdered graphite. Quite easy to do. Just going to drop the things out of the way, strings out of the way, and just drop some of this in. If you don't have powdered graphite, you can use the lead from a soft pencil. HB or something like that, and just kind of sharpen it and then draw into the slot. As long as to get some of the graphite into the slot, you're fine. And then once I've done this, it'll be a matter of stretching the strings. That wasn't so good because I flipped most of the graphite out of the way, but there you go. Making sure that the string tree is in the right position. I'll blow the rest of that away in a minute with a little can of air, but the thing that's really important to do at this stage, and actually can't stress it enough really, is to get the stretch out of the strings. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to make sure everything's through, everything's through and anchored properly, which it is. I got an email back from John, who said he'd like the tremelo locked down out of commission, so I'm just going to make sure it's all the way in, which is fine. So we were heading that way anyway, anticipating that he didn't want it floating, and he said he wanted lighter strings on there as well, so that's good. We've gone with a 9, so it was a good guess, and he also wanted that sorting out, which we've done. So all's good. So what I recommend now is, while it's still completely loose, you grab hold of the strings and with your thumb and forefinger go up and down the string and pressing kind of against itself or against your fingers rather than pulling the string too far in any direction. Just go up and down and stretch out all of the slack that's still in those strings, and also do it at the end here as well. Now this is partly why I always want to make sure there isn't too much wrap around the post, because just as the string itself has a lot of stretch potential until we get rid of it like this, so does the stuff going around the post. And I've been really amazed over time now to see just how disruptive this stretch can be, because it will hold the stretch in the post or in the string itself way longer than you would think was possible, so that even when you think it's steadied up and settled down, if you like, you can then go ahead and bend a string in a solo, and then before you know it, it's suddenly out of tune, and yet could have been staying in tune, what appeared to be in tune, right, all the way up to that point. So it holds on to the stretch for a very long time, even after it's kind of stabilized. And so quite often people will bring guitars to me that they've been playing for months, and for them, as far as they're concerned, the strings are, the stretch is all gone out of the strings. And then if I play it with maybe a different technique, or I deliberately go and put do some huge bends or something to test out the levelness of the frets, and then suddenly it's out of tune. So now, just up on the E string, I'm just taking care when I'm stretching this. I want to stretch it, but I also just want to be careful I don't break it. So having done that, I'm going to now go for putting it in tune. Making sure the string tree is straight. And this is where we get to the scary bit, where you can see it's making my fingers dirty already. So I'm going to go back down here and again bend these strings again, or stretch them I should say, not bend them really. I found that if you do this 4 times in a row, you can be pretty certain that almost all the stretch has gone out of the strings. Then you could go back on stage and start playing the second half of your set with your new strings. Doing. God, I hate it doing these thinner ones, especially when I've got no spares. Okay, so we'll be out of tune again, so right, for this purpose of sort of speed and oh my god, that's so light to play. Yeah, so in the interest of speed of finishing this video, I'm going to just do straight onto the intonation bit. Everything's locked down the way I want, so just before I do that I'm going to put the plate on the back again, and then we'll be sort of almost done all the structural stuff, and then it will just be a matter of doing the intonation. Now the intonation part, if you haven't come across this concept before, ignore me, close your ears if you have. The intonation is a process of making sure that each string is exactly the right length for this guitar. Now you think to yourself, surely they should all be one length. Well, in a sense they're all based around one length, and that means there's a thing called a scale length, which is the I suppose it's a notional figure, which is the distance between the nut and the bridge. So what you have in the guitar world is a range of scale lengths, which give you, there's a few different ones, and they tend to be standardized so that Strats are all one scale length, Les Paul copies or Les Pauls are all another scale length. So, and there are a few different kinds of guitars, but in general, it's a good idea to have a limited number of scale lengths, because it means that everybody is manufacturing parts to fit the same kind of basic few options. So when somebody manufactures a neck, they have to have something that tells them how quickly the frets come close, get closer together, where they're positioned, and how fast what rate the gap narrows, or the distance between the frets narrows. And that calculation, a part of that calculation, is the scale length, which is this length here, the notional length that you want for this guitar. So if it's a Strat style guitar, I never remember this rightly, I think it's 25.5 inches from here to here, or 648 millimeters. And so that number goes into this calculation, and then that tells the manufacturer where to put these frets, and so that anyone manufacturing a neck for a 648mm scale length guitar like a Strat will always end up with the same length neck, with the frets coming together at the same rate, so they would all line up side by side if you put two Strat necks together with the same scale length. So that's the scale length, is that distance between if you like, the middle point of the bridge saddles, and the nut. But of course it's not quite that simple, because of the different materials and the different thicknesses of the strings, it means the strings actually have to be just a slightly tiny bit different length. Each one has to be a little bit different length to the other. And what you find is that because of the way it goes, if you have 3 plain ones and then 3 wound ones, the intonation tends to go slightly shorter on the thinner string, slightly longer overall on the B, slightly longer on the G, then slightly shorter again on the wound D, slightly longer on the A, slightly longer again on the E. So it's 2 groups of 3 staggered things, and you can see that as a result every string on this guitar has a slightly different length. Now if you were trying to measure it with a ruler, it would be hard work to get these kinds of distances worked out exactly. So conveniently we don't do it with a ruler, we can do it with something that stands for distance but isn't distance, it's sound. So pitch is the note that we get when the string is a certain length, and so let's just we'll do it with the visual tuner because it's so much easier actually. Let's put the tuner on. I use this application called iStrobo Soft, and it's really good because I can see straight away what it's doing. Okay, I'm just looking at these saddles, they need slight alteration. Just do a little quick tweak. My measurements mustn't have been also very good before. What have I got? So it is the G which is standing out a little bit. Just bear with me while I crank this down a bit. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to use sound to tell us what the actual length is, which is, as I say, is a pretty good, cool way of doing it. So the way we do this, I'm just going to slack these a little bit more and stretching them long ways. What we can do is, if we ping the harmonic, or if we tune the guitar to the harmonic ping on the 12th fret, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's do it on the bottom E. We'll ping the harmonic on the 12th fret. Now I want to tune that to an E first of all, so let's get it close to an E. And then ping the harmonic and do it till it's in tune. If this string is now currently exactly the right length for this neck on this scale length guitar setup, then the 12th fret fretted with my finger will be exactly the same note as the harmonic. So there, we tune it to the E, or the true note, just for ease, so we can see the note is stable. Now look what happens when I fret the note. Ping, fret. So you can see the fretted note is slightly sharp. So what I do is I get myself the correct screwdriver head, and I'm going to use the bridge to, if the string is sharp, if the fretted note is sharp, what it means is the string is slightly too short. That means we have to lengthen it, which is to bring it this way. And to bring it this way with the screw down here, we have to turn it clockwise, and that will pull the saddle towards me, and it makes the string longer. It also raises the pitch of the note for the time being, so we retune it. Fractionally sharp. The slight problem I've got now is I'm pulling this bridge saddle back but compressing the spring, and it's just about running out of room to compress the spring anymore, but I think we'll just about get there. So you can see the fretted note is slightly too short. That means we have to lengthen it, which is to bring it this way. And to bring it this way with the screw down here, we have to turn it clockwise, and that will pull the saddle towards me, and it makes the string longer. It also raises the pitch of the note for the time being, so we retune it. with this now to the A. Likewise, this is a little bit sharp. So we'll do the same. This one's got a little bit more room to come back, so it'll be a while before I squish the spring down completely on this one. So we'll check that. Sharp. Again, that means lengthen it, so I pull this T, pull the saddle, or turn the screw clockwise to pull the saddle back. It will raise the pitch. Drop it down to D again. Tiny bit sharp. Couple more turns, clockwise still. And so on. Slightly sharp. Again, just turn it clockwise. Again, it'll raise the pitch, but it'll overall lengthen the string. I've noticed with Yamaha Pacificas, in fact I'm sure I have, there's a sympathetic harmonic note that kicks off on these top two strings, or whenever you play the guitar down here. So it might be worth listening carefully. See if you get that note. Sometimes you have to put a little bit of, I don't know, tape or something on there to stop it. It's a very weird thing, but... B. Slightly sharp. Yeah, notice I'm doing this in the playing position because it's sort of easier to do actually than doing it flat on its back. Can do it on its back. Just bear in mind that the notes you're working to aren't going to be the same when you stand it up, because gravity will have a tiny effect on it, particularly if you support the neck. It will be minuscule. But doing it like this, you can see it's quite easy to do. You should be on this time. Sharp. I can tell that anyway by looking at it, because the bridge saddle is quite a way forward out of the sequence, the two groups of three, so once you've got a couple of them in you can pretty much guess the rest, but it's nice to carry on and do it properly. There we go. So we have, yeah. Bending. Take the last of the stretch out. Tune it again. Yeah, very low, very easy to play. There you go, John, and anyone else watching. We've pretty much done. That's the Yamaha Pacifica. Just give it one last dust over before it goes back in its box. Pacifica, I think this is the basic one. It hasn't got any numbers on it, and last time I tried to name the numbers on the Pacifica I got it all wrong, but anyway, it's the Pacifica 12 or something. It's got a very low action down this end. It's got a very low action at this end. It's got a very flat neck, a bit flatter than I'd like, as you know, but there we go. Nice new strings, all cleaned up, jack plug input fixed, all polished up nicely, the neck re-oiled, frets not only levelled but also the grooves taken out of them down here, so it's all kind of like it's brand new. It's one of those things, if the action feels too low for you, my trademark is to do it really low. If it feels too low for you, never had, well, I can't really remember anyone ever saying that, but you can always take your 1.5mm thing and just gently raise up the grub screws down here, or screw them in. That will bring the saddles higher, and do the same amount all the way across, and you'll have a slightly higher action. But for me, that plays very easily. checking what I want to check quickly is the relative volumes on the pickups. There we go. Thanks for staying around for the last couple of hours. Yeah, I cut out some of the really boring stuff, yeah, the Yamaha Pacifica, nice guitar to learn on. Thank you. See you again in Relove's Guitars Workshop. I'll be off now. Give this a dust over, put it back, or I'll give it a bit of a play later on, and then put it back in its case. So I had a spare evening this evening, John, so I got it done as soon as I received it. I've got a busy weekend coming up, so I thought I'd sneak it in this evening and get it ready to go back to you on Monday next week. Okay, so thanks for joining me in the shed. I'll see you soon.